Welcome to Release with Soulnal. A lot of times, many people have asked me, why have I become who I've become, and what brought me to the path of being a healer, of being a coach, a life coach. And I thought, let's bring it to the audience. I am born from Singapore. I'm a Singaporean. And then I did go to Okinawa, Japan to do my elementary and grade two till grade two. And because we are Singaporeans, my brother had to actually serve the National Army. And being the only son, we decided, or my mom decided to bring us back to Singapore. And that was a very big transition for me because I was very comfortable with the way things were in Japan. We were around the American base and we stayed in this townhouse, and it was more fun and games in a British school. And when I came to Singapore, it's very well known of how the education in Singapore is really tough and it's a lot of exams and tests. And I felt I wasn't able to cope with life. But as an Indian family, we're taught to be resilient, and I grew up. I have three siblings, two older sisters and one brother, and I was pretty much like the black sheep of the family, or so I was called. And I now realize that I was supposed to be a lion that just didn't fit in. My job was to roar, and that's the conditioning that my family put in me. I got married, and it was an arranged marriage. And before even saying a yes, I had actually spoken to my father and said I don't want to get married because I didn't feel I was marriage material. I mean, of course, I could fit in. My mom was pretty strict about get up in the morning, start cooking. I must have started making tea and frying things at the age of 8. And she would always say that you need to learn all of this because what will your mother-in-law say? Touchwood, I have a beautiful mother-in-law, and instead, if there's anything, she makes me my morning tea. So God bless my mother, who was just crazily trying to train me. But that's Indian mothers. It was like she came from a background where there was a lot of trauma for her, I believe. So my mom actually came from a background where her childhood pretty much was quite difficult, and I only learned that very much later in life. In saying so, now I understand about generational ancestral healing, and it's so important because they may have not known that there was a way to heal, but there is a field out there. And in that field, we have generational, trauma, we have experiences. If you believe in past life, there's past life there too. According to Bruce Lipton, it's not just in your cells, it's not just genetic, it's also in the field. So if you want to change something, from that learning is like you are the body and you're telecasting and you're connecting to that field and you're playing those programs. So if you want something to change, you need to actually reprogram that program that's in the field to change. That's how I've changed a lot about myself, my health, my life. Because trust me, anybody who knows Sonal before, especially before my marriage, my mom passed away, know that I was a sickling. I was a cotton candy that would constantly fall sick. I couldn't get wet in the rain because it meant 1 week being in bed. I had migraines where it meant 60 Panadols extra with codeine. And I had a combination of medicine for my migraine. And I would often be rushed to the hospital. But when my mom passed away, the grief was pretty much dark because my daughter went off to uni. So I was also having an empty nest. Of course, my son was still, he had 3 more years to Ivy. But to me, it hit me or it dawned upon me that I was actually an orphan now. I didn't have my dad, I didn't have my mom. And I was a stubborn child of God, and I still call myself a stubborn child of God because when my father passed away, I kept on telling God, and excuse the language, that don't you dare take my mom away till I'm ready. And my mom pretty much was a cat with 9 lives. Every time I would get a call that you need to come into Singapore because she's going in for an operation, and that this might be it. And every time she would come out, and I would stay in the hospital because I was the one that was coming from Bangkok. So it was easy for me to stay with her in the ICU, and my mom barely spoke English. So I would, lie down in the hospital ICU. And every time she would come out of a operation and she would say, in a very groggy state, I'm not going anywhere till you're okay. I never understood because I didn't share much about my life to my mom. But I do regret one time where she was, I think, in a lot of pain and she kept on saying, I'm not okay. And I was like, yeah, mom, just try to sleep. And she's like, I'm in too much of pain and I'm going to kill myself. And I was like, mom, just try to sleep. And, she just kept on venting about her pain and she kept on saying, I'm not okay. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. And in frustration, I said to her, go ahead, do what you have to do. And she said, I'm going to choke myself. And of course, logically, I know you're not capable of choking yourself to death. But she did it. And I was watching at the corner of my eye. And I regretted that when she did pass away because I remember it was a beautiful Sunday morning and I woke up and I was getting orders for my, artifacts, and we went for lunch. My husband said, let's go for a Hindi movie, and we went for massage. It was a beautiful day. And towards the end, he said, what do you want to do now? And I said, I would like to go to Irawan, which is the Brahma temple. And when we were passing our lane, I said, you know what, can we just go home? I'm tired. And my husband just said, if you put something out, it's good to do it. So we went to the Iravan temple. I did my round, and for the first time, I sat on the bench while my husband was still praying. And my brother called and said, where are you? And I said, I'm at the temple. And he said, can you sit down? I said, I am sitting down. And he said, I think mom's no more. And I remember going numb because it's fight, flight, freeze. And I froze for a moment that the day has come because 2 weeks ago on a Sunday, I had a dream that mom will go. And I remember telling my husband, I need to go visit her. And my brother and my husband were saying, you're going to go next month anyway. Why don't you just wait? And my daughter was going to go for her uni interview. And I said, I don't know. I just feel I will regret. And we were having the Bangkok coup that time. And the last exam was the Spanish, and we had to rush the kids because we got a call from the school saying half the kids in Bangkok have gone for it, half haven't. So you got to bring your child in. And right after that exam, my daughter was brought into the airport and we flew to Singapore. And I remember that Sunday and I held her hand and I internally saw she was suffering. And I just internally said, Mom, I'm okay, you can go. It's like an inner knowing that this was it. And I needed to let her go, and I needed to tell God that it's okay to let her go. And the usual ritual when you say goodbye to mom, you get this an envelope, which is a way of saying I love you. And I didn't look back that day when I said goodbye. And I walked out. And the following Sunday, my daughter graduated. And it was that Sunday where I was at the Iravan temple and I was told mom's no more. When I came to my senses, I was glad that I did have my final goodbye because I would have regretted this. And we flew to Singapore. We did the rituals. I came back. But I think it dawned upon me that I wasn't okay and I wasn't ready to let go of mom. And I became really sick. My migraines were at they were at peak. I wouldn't get out of the room. My husband was sweet enough to take me on a holiday. We went to Greece, we went to Istanbul, but at the back of my mind, I don't think I got over it. And I was pretty much suicidal. It was just a question of, there were times when I would actually be lying on bed and I would have visions of myself just jumping off the bed and jumping off the balcony. And I would just hold on to my bed and say, no, Soulnal, you have children and you can't do this. And then a good friend of mine told me to read The Journey, which is by Brandon Bass. And I read the book at that point and I resonated a lot with her. But prior to this, when my mom was cremated and we left that auditorium, it was insane because my mom never liked to be left alone. And within 3 minutes, everything was electronic, and we just went and we went to the Sikh temple, and the prayer had started. And I was like in a trance, and I sat in front where you have these musicians, which we call party at the Gurdwara. And I just internally kept on saying, and my mom was a Radha Swami, that I need to know that Maharaji, you've taken my mom. I need to know that the promise that's made when you take Nam is fulfilled. And I was just in my internal dialogues, and I looked at the white cloth in front of me, and I see an image of a man, and he pretty much looked like Jesus Christ. And I was like, my mom wasn't Christian. And so the next image I got was someone who looked like Mother Mary. And I was like, this isn't making sense. Babaji, Maharaji, where are you? And then I see Sai Baba. And I know my mom used to watch this Z serial. And she wanted to go to Shirdi, but she never made it there. So I was like, okay, that's still close, but still, where are you? And then I see Shiv Bhagwan. And I was like, as soon as I was born, my mom was a Radha Swami. I never saw her do any, idol puja or something. And I just stayed there. And then my brother was called to take the Guru Granth to sleep. And, we bent down and we touched the white cloth. And I got up and I saw a big image of Maharaji. And I smiled and I said, okay, Maharaji, you've taken her. I told this story a few days, maybe 3 days in, to my brother about what I saw. And he said, I'm going to take you to an aunt's place, and she has a book called Fakir by Rusbeh. In this book, it's about how you have 5 living masters in a lifetime. So to me, it was like, okay, all of them had a connection. I saw 5 images, and maybe, just maybe, Mom, that's where you've gone. And that's when the next book I read was The Journey, and I decided to go in and do the journey to heal myself, to come out of my grief. And it not only changed my life, I'm a journey practitioner, but I also learned to be healthy. I don't now have a bag full of medicines. And I've healed a lot of my emotional childhood trauma, that I'm no more sick the way I used to be. And it's a beautiful theory of how you go down your layers and heal yourself. And it's something I use a lot with my clients. Right after that, after I finished the whole 5 seminar, I remember during the seminar, I would suddenly pair up with someone, or someone would just hold my hand as though it was my mom holding my hand. And the next day I'll ask the person, why did you do that? And she's like, I don't know. I had an internal calling to just hold your hand. And these seminars were happening in Bangalore, which is where my mom came after the Pakistan and India separation. So I felt maybe this is it. This is where mom is or this is where her soul is, because this is where she grew up. And I remember once the teacher said during a manifestation seminar to touch the ground and ask for what you want. And I sat on the floor, and it felt like my mother's womb. And I sat there for many hours during that seminar because it felt safe. In saying that, when I finished all 5 seminars, and my sister-in-law wanted books from the bookshop, and I went to the airport and I was looking at different books. But there was one book that kept calling out, and it was The Law of the Spirit World by Khorshid. This book is about a lady who loses her 2 children in an accident, and how they reach someone who's a medium, who tells the medium to reach out to my mom, because we're trying to reach out to her and tell her that we are okay and we are in the spirit world. And the book explains the law of the spirit world, where the sons are to write with the mom. I remember coming back and I was reading it, and one fine day, I just decided halfway through, I'm going to just take a pen and a paper, and I closed my eyes and I allowed the pen to do what it wanted. And I opened my eyes, and the pen actually drew some diagram, and I turned it around, trying to figure out what this abstract was. And it was actually a picture of a mom and a child. Now, I come from a background where we were told not to even play the Ouija board and not to mess with the spirits. So you could have imagined I freaked, and I stopped reading the book. And I said, it's enough for me to know, Mom, you're there. But that wasn't it. I started having a lot of voices and stuff's happening. I met someone who I do speak about. I do tell her during my previous podcast, where it was after a kitty, and I met her and she said, Soulnal, this is, you need to speak to someone. And, this is a part that can get very dangerous. And I repeat, it can get very dangerous. So I spoke to this person and she said, you're a Claire. And in those days, I was not very well read. So I was like, I don't know what that means, but what do I do? And she said, Soulnal, you should read the book from Nan Omrika, The Sound of Silence. And after reading one of her trilogy books, you can connect with her and she will help you connect to your mom. Now you can imagine for me, that was like, I'm reading it today, because what do you mean by connect to my mom? So I read The Sound of Silence, but she has the book Listening to the Silence, Beyond the Silence. She's no more. She just recently passed, but I was privileged to actually meet her in real. I read the book and I reached a page where I saw the picture of Meher Baba, and I freaked out because it was the person I saw on that white cloth, which is Meher Baba. And I remember dropping the book on the floor, like it felt this whole thing was freaky and what in the world is happening, but I still wanted to connect to Nanomrika. And so I read the book. I called her. She said, email me. I emailed her and she said to make the payments for the auto writing, which I did. And a few days later, I get her message that your mom's been trying to reach out to you. And I remember driving back and I was reading that message. I know, disclaimer, do not read your mobile or do not use your mobile while you're driving. But I read that and it made me angry first, because it felt like, Mom, how dare you? You didn't take care of me when you were alive. Why now? I reached home and I called her and she said, your mom's been trying to reach out to you. And I said, how do I believe this? And she's like, you'll get the signs. And I was like, okay, whatever. I remember that day, I slept in the night really confused, in tears on my pillow. And that night, weirdly, I had birds making noise behind the window. And I said, it must be very common for that to happen. But when I woke up and I looked at the mirror, dressing table mirror, there were handprints, which didn't make sense, but I was skeptical. And I remember getting my helper to match the handprint, and it didn't. And I realized something was up right now. I don't know what's happening. And so I decided that I'm going to go to India, which I normally do, and I'm going to actually speak to a channeler. And one of the journey, delegates knew Shamak Dawar, who is also a psychic and a medium. And she said, I'll connect you. And I think the IFA had just happened and he wasn't well. And he said, connect her to Smita Jacker, who's also an actress and a coach and a healer. And I made an appointment and I said, okay. Now, I also have my own guru, and she's in Mumbai in Sion. So I didn't understand what's this whole thing with Meher Baba, who's in Mehrabad, which is few hours away from Pune. Have I lost my mind? Have I lost my marbles? And I arrived at the airport, took a taxi to my husband's cousin's house, and it was raining. And like I said, I thought I had lost my marbles. So I actually thought, what if the raindrops, because it was raining, what if the raindrops on the window make an M? And just then I said, Sonal, enough. But I kid you not, a female teenage beggar walked to the window. She writes the M with her finger. She says the M and she walks away. And I have a picture which I'll share when I do publish the podcast. And as though that wasn't enough, stubborn child of God, I had gone to my own satsang the next day and I said, I need to know because I've made my reservations to go to Mehrabad, but why would I go anywhere else when I belong here? But anyway, I'm going to test this. If today's satsang has Meher Baba in any of their teaching, I will still come to you. And they played a bhajan, which is a hymn. And in that bhajan was the wordings Vandana Hamari Hai, which means Vandana is mine. And that's my before marriage name. So in my head, I was like, there, I belong here. Why should I come to you? But okay, fair. I said, if you say Meher or Baba, I will be there. The guru comes in, she says Hari Om, and she sings a bhajan, and in that bhajan, the word avatar is there. And if I'm not mistaken, Sai Baba pronounces Meher Baba as Avatar Meher Baba. So that was my sign that I had to go to Mehrabad. And I did. But before going there, I met Smita Jacker because I needed surety. I needed certainty. And as soon as I sat there and she just asks my mom's name and whatever, and then immediately it was all her. And she said, I've been waiting for you and I'm so sorry. And there are few personal things that the medium said. And I asked her, why have you gone here? Because you believed in someone else. And she said, really? We all are the same. It's just different parts to the same light. And they all come here. And I was like, what is here? And she said, I'm waiting for you. So I did go to Mehrabad. That itself was another experience because I don't like the typical bhajans and book Sound of Silence. You'll understand more of why I was looking for mom at Mehrabad. And I thought I saw her. It was a lot of confusion. And I remember while going back to my room, which is the NPR for foreigners, I was just walking blindly and crying. And this guy was on his cycle and he starts saying things which I know it's not normal, but it was like as though there was someone saying that, stop crying, I'm here for you. I reached an end and I was like, I looked at this railway and I was like, this is definitely the wrong way. And he's like, where do you stay? And I was like, I don't know, but I have this piece of paper. And he's like, you stay at the NPR. He booked an auto, paid for it. I reached back and I again cried myself to sleep because I didn't know what I was doing. Why was I here? The next morning I got up. I went to the Samadhi, which is where Meher Baba has been put. I did my prayers, I sat there, and I knew I was in a trance. And someone sang, Wise Man Says, Only Fool Rush In. But I can't help falling in love with you. If I stay, would it be a sin? But I can't help falling in love with you. And I don't know what happened. I went to the bookstore. I bought books on Meher Baba. I got a picture of Meher Baba. I bought a pendant and I wore it. And I went back to the room and I put it up. And it's like, you know, that moment where your body and your mind and your heart are all three doing different things. And I just went with the flow. The next morning I was leaving and that was my goodbye. We sat there, they were going to sing the bhajans. But this time I had 3 or 4 people sing Wise Man Says. the organ and stuff. Went, had breakfast, and there was this lady who walked to me and she said, "You look different. I mean, you look new." And I said, "I am, but I don't know what's happening." And I shared my mom's passing and the part to why I'm here and the song. And she said, "What's with the song?" And I was like, "It's a very dear song. It has a lot of back meaning to it." And she said, "We were the ones who sang it." And I was like, "Why?" She said, "The minute we took out our slippers, internally we all were told to sing this." I didn't know what to think of it, but I left the place knowing something was starting. I don't know what that was, but something was starting. I went back, finished my case studies, did pranic, did theta healing. And I remember in theta healing, when you go back and bring messages from your loved one and your ancestors, my partner said, "There's a lady on a wheelchair, and there is this big white man." And I was like, "Yes, Nan Omega did say I have a master as my guide." And in those days, and someone pretty much from my lineage, but in those days they didn't have names, and he just has a swastik. But he's there to guide you. And so was my mom. And I remember telling God that I need to start telling my husband what's going on with me because I feel I've lost it. I've gone cuckoo. And that was the start of the journey to healing our soul, because the soul is pure. But according to the pranic, it's what's right here. This connects to that soul. But it's what gives you breath. And when you die, the body drops. The soul remains. It's like another TV you buy when your TV fails and you then get a new TV and you telecast. And everything is in the field. It's like that decoder. And you start picking things up according to your old programs and old beliefs and past lives and future lives, because it's the matrix field. And it's confusing. Trust me, it was. But it marks my 10 years of being in this journey from 1994 to 2024. And whatever I dreamt of as a child, of where is God, from reading the Gita, I did get baptized with Christianity. I have read the Quran. I kept on being the stubborn child who wanted answers, only to realize 2 years ago, I am that I am. And the God in me bows down to the God in you. And if there's anything that I've been searching for, it's been within me. It always has been. It's a whole universe within us, but we keep searching outside. And not many people who are listening to this will understand this, because trust me, I didn't understand. I'm still sometimes trying to make sense. But am I a psychic? Am I a clair? What am I hearing? I don't know. Because sometimes in wanting to know, you get confused. In the not knowing, you become an empty vessel of grace to be led where you have to be. And I was just asked, "What's the reason you're doing the podcast, Soulnal?" And I don't know. And I'm okay not to know, because when I lost everything, every moment of losing who I was, to my 50th birthday, to ending it with being a nobody. And I remember calling my coach and saying, "Sounds nice, but I can't be a nobody." And he had said, "You are not the body, Soulnal." And I was like, I know. But once we come into this body, we're striving to be somebody. And as long as you're a somebody, you can't be who you desire or want to be. You put layers and layers and layers to that light. And once I removed all those layers like an onion peel, I became the light, I became the love. So when you are love and light, there is no psychic. It's me just tapping into your consciousness. It's an ability we all have, but we've forgotten. So from my soul to your soul, may you reach the light and love you desire.